Hello, good evening. Welcome to Ghana Tonight. We're live money news up here at Adesa Wekanda, also live on 2-3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. I am Alfred Okanse. Tonight, Minister of Education Dr. Yao Osei Duchum speaks on critical issues affecting the education sector. Stay tuned in for that exclusive interview. I sat with him to talk about the free senior high school program, whether it will be reviewed, the issues of feeding in the senior high schools, and then also the textbooks in the new curriculum. Tonight, two members of the NPP have been referred to the party's complaints committee for open declaration of support for presidential hopefuls. How might this impact in intra-party unity ahead of the 2024 elections? We'll get into it also. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana has increased the policy rate by 300 basis points. How does this matter to you, especially those of you who have taken loans from the banks? Stay with me. We're getting to all of that on Ghana Tonight. There are questions and concerns about the education sector, which we'll spend some time with the Education Minister to ask. Calls about the free senior high school being reviewed because we are the IMF. We are faced with an economic crisis. There's no money. You'll hear from him on this. But let's settle for Ghana Briefs tonight. Minister of Education Dr. Yao Osei Duchum says schools in the northern region will heave a sigh of relief as supply of food is on the way to remedy any shortages. Meanwhile, the minority has asked the ministry to expedite efforts towards uninterrupted food supply to all schools. The new Patriotic Party has referred Member of Parliament for Tafo, Eko Vincent Asifua and Hobson Adoye to its National Complaints Committee over their open declaration of support to presidential candidate hopefuls. The Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association is urging psychological assistance for a trainee nurse of the Nalerugu Training College, whose comic viral video has attracted public backlash. Mohammed Mubabatu says she has been suicidal following the barrage of attacks she has received. Internal Audit Agency wants to be clothed with prosecutorial powers in its effort to prevent the siphoning of billions of cedis annually from the state through ghost names on government payroll. Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana increases policy rate by 300 basis points to 22% from 19% as the central bank sets a host of measures to halt cedi depreciation and inflation. You can find more on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. Guess what? Concerns have been raised about the impact that financing the free senior high school program is having on the government budget. Look, 2.3 billion cedis was budgeted for the financing of free senior high school program in the 2022 budget. Already, we've seen concerns about feeding, and continuously, the last 3 weeks, we had senior high schools closing down. In fact, some of them actually restricting their students from engaging in sporting activities because there's no food. Okay? Now, that gave rise to concerns about a review of the free senior high school policy because we are at the IMF and there's no money. And the fact that the government will need some more money to finance the free senior high school program. This 2.3 billion Ghana cedis that's been captured in the budget, where is the money going to come from? Is government considering a review of the free senior high school program because we are the IMF and we are faced with an economic crisis? Those questions will get answers to tonight from the Education Minister. Also, we started a new curriculum at the basic level without textbooks. Does he now concede that maybe we could have approached things differently? We'll talk about that. Are the textbooks coming anytime soon? You'll get answers to that. But this is the cost of the free senior high school policy since 2017, right? This is captured in the budget, the various budgets as presented. 2017, 480 million. 2018, 1.3 billion cedis. 2019, 1.6 billion. 2020, 2.4 billion. 2021, you have 1.9 billion was spent on the free senior school program. And this came from both Government of Ghana sources and also our oil revenue from the oil find. In fact, the annual budget funding amount, the ABFA, which is the portion of our oil revenue, which is given to government to finance projects. A chunk of it is used to finance the free senior high school program. And government has justified that over the period as human capacity building. Okay, those are the sources for financing for the free senior high school program. Now, if you have all this together, that's about 9.98 billion cedis. Keep that figure in mind, because the Education Committee of Parliament, especially the minority on that Education Committee of Parliament, has raised concerns about some inconsistency in the figures of exactly how much has been spent on financing the free SHS program. We'll get that answer as well. Stay with me on Ghana Tonight. We'll take this quick break. We'll be back and we'll get straight into that interview with the Education Minister, Dr. Yaw Osei Aduchum. Now, this is what we gleaned from the 2022 mid-year budget statement. This was what was captured in there. As at the end of 2021, 5.3 billion. Now, if you look at the 2021 mid-year budget review, that 7.62 billion was captured in there. The difference, I recall the finance minister saying, was used to finance the PPEs and so on and so forth to prepare the schools for reopening. But all of this we'll get answers to right after this quick break. On Ghana Tonight, we'll get straight into the Minister of Education's exclusive interview on these and more, including the examination leakages at the WASSCE level. What is the ministry doing about this? Stay with us. We'll be back shortly after this quick break with that exclusive interview. Well, welcome back to Ghana Tonight. We're live on TV Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. Education Minister Dr. Yaw Osei Aduchum is responding to calls for a review of the free senior high school program, the face of the economic crisis, the lack of textbooks. Also, we've started a new curriculum and all other related matters to the education sector. I start with him on this. Stay with me as we get into this interview. Right afterwards, we would have a number of experts in the education sector also joining us on the show. Take a look. And you talk a lot about, for instance, what's happening from the transition of secondary to tertiary. But you cannot build a superstructure on a weak foundation, right? And that's where the concern about the basic level of education comes in. Have you done an assessment of the basic level of our education system in this country? And what are the specific interventions to address them?
You see, the point of the matter is this. In other jurisdictions, developed nations where education have tremendously improved the fortunes of the nation, you don't allow students to go to school from KG to junior high school before you do your first national assessment. So in Ghana, when students go to school, the nation knows nothing about them until after 11 years, 2 years of KG, 6 years of primary, 3 years of junior high. That is when we begin to say, oh, what is going on with them? 11 years. Too late. Too late. So that does not follow international best practices. So if you ask me, before last year, if you ask me that, I'll tell you I don't know. This is the first time we have school level data, we have student level data, we have regional level data, we have district level data, national level data, and there has been some shockers. For example, Ahafo happens to be the highest performing region in the country. A student gets to junior high school 1. All the teachers know that that child cannot read, right? But within the curriculum that the school is implementing, their hands are tied behind their back. They don't have an intervention English for that student. And then you hear about after school, parents should pay, right? But the kid is sitting in the school during the regular school day. You didn't seize the opportunity to support him to improve on English. improve on mathematics, but they will tell you they don't know. But now we know. So the students who walk into junior high school year 1, both the assessment from primary 6 on the national standardized test and any in-house assessment will tell us the students who are struggling. And then what we are saying is this. We are now developing a policy for intervention that says, instead of taking 9 courses, that student can do additional English, additional writing if they can write. So that you limit even the number that they do on the BEC. So what we are looking at is the second term of the president, a common sense approach to improving learning outcomes, because we've done the macro level, but this has to trickle down to the student who is sitting in front of us in the classroom.
And that also feeds into, because after making sure that, yes, you assess them, you get the right data, it also fits into the kind of curriculum, the details of the curriculum that you're going to use. So that's why you embarked on this curriculum reforms. What's the state of affairs with the curriculum reforms now?
Training has been offered at last the basic level. They've been introduced. Now the good news is that textbooks are going.
You started distributing the textbooks?
Oh yes, I was appointed town publishers, has finished theirs, is going. Most of the publishers have completed it, and textbooks are going to be hitting the classroom. Distribution is ongoing now. I think it's going through the regional warehouses. From there it's going to the classroom. So the good news is that the students are now on vacation, and by the time school opens, a number of the schools will have received textbooks so that it will complement the teaching and learning process, so that we can all get better outcomes. But I'm excited. I went to the printing house myself.
I saw you. I was there.
Oh, you were there?
So, how many publishers were engaged, and how many of them have finished and the textbooks dispatched?
I will not be able to give you the percentage of those who have finished, but I know that we got reports from about 4 of them. The deputy minister has also visited a number of the publishers. But I'll be able to get your listeners opportunity, your viewers the opportunity. After this interview, we'll get a number and then we'll forward it to you. And you'll be able to tell your viewers as to how many, as of today, have completed and have distributed. And then we'll be able to also update your viewers in terms of what time it hits the various schools. But the good news is that
the assurance is by the time they get back to school, when school reopens, this is in September.
Yeah, textbooks will be going. And I'm excited about the fact that the public, most of them have met their timelines ahead of schedule. So it's good.
But you also acknowledge the concerns that others raised about the absence of the textbooks and how that was impacting on the effective implementation of this new curriculum.
I'm the teacher-in-chief. How would I question you on that? If you bring this up, I'll say yes, it could have been done better. But the good news is that it's there. And when I visit classroom and I teach like I did at St. Mary's, there were books there that I was able to use, and it facilitated the process when I took Cochrane and I read with the students. So, of course, when you have it, it enhances what you do. And it was a learning process. And yes, things will get better because the teachers will have the resource that they can use to complement what they do.
How do you answer those who say that maybe this process should have preceded the implementation of the new curriculum in the first place?
Actually, it's not done. International best practice is that publishers need time. So when you say curriculum is adopted and delivered, what you do that you get some materials for teachers to work with. But I'll say that it shouldn't take 2 years, right? So I concede that it could have been fast-tracked. But I inherited a challenge. It was an opportunity for me. And we facilitated a process so that we can get it done.
Is government considering the proposals to review the free senior high school program?
I have not received any proposals. As a minister for education, what I do, I serve at the behest of the president. What he tells me to do is what I do. I have not received any proposals from anyone.
Well, the IMF, we are faced with an economic crisis and the impact that it is having on government finances. Is there any justification for the continuous financing of the Free Senior High School in its current form, or you being the leader or the lead implementer of that policy, you would consider views of a review of the policy so as to ensure its sustainability in the wake of the economic crisis that we are in?
Ghana is a beautiful country. In other jurisdictions, if government says I'll do something, nobody questions it. So it's a beautiful nation. If government says I have the space and I'll do it, we allow the government to do it. That is their commitment to the nation. You see, when we talk about Free Senior High School, to some of us who are privileged, right, we look at it through a different lens. When you go to my villages in Bosomtwe, you go to Bonkoko, look at the opportunity this has presented to them. They are sitting on edge thinking that the opportunity is going to be taken away from them. I want to assure the people of this country, the people of Bonkoko, Bontefufu, and all this village, that their opportunity will not be taken away from them, and that the president is fully committed to the implementation of Free Senior High School. And that is what I have. I serve at the behest of the president. What he says is what I do.
Well, the finance minister says the review of a Free Senior High School program is always on the table, and in fact that you, the Minister of Education, is in conversations.
I serve at the behest of the President of the Republic, the one who recruited me to come back to Ghana. He visited my school in California, and he said, Dr. Duchum, I need you to come and help me implement Free Senior High School. I'm here. I'm implementing Free Senior according to his dictates. What he tells me to do is what I do.
I see. I need a clarity because of what the instance that the finance minister made reference to. So that because he made the statement that you are also in conversations to see how parents can also take part of, for instance, the
I haven't heard that from the president. I serve at the behest of the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa.
How much has been spent on the Free Senior School program since the last 6 years?
I won't sit here and give you that data because I don't have it in front of me here. I don't want to make a mistake. I will send it to you. I've asked my staff to reconcile whatever data they have with that of finance so that it will be the same. So I don't want to contradict anybody.
But for this year, it's 2.3 billion. That's captured in the 2022 budget.
Yes.
Has that money been released?
Of course.
You have the 2.3 billion.
No. Budgeting and disbursement doesn't align that way. It's just like, you're going to be paid 2,000 a month, right? So it's 24,000 a year. They don't give you 24,000. Every month, based on your need, you get disbursement. So we have a cash flow plan, and we are getting disbursement based on the cash flow plan that we have jointly developed with the Ministry of Finance.
Recently, some senior high schools experienced shortage in some food items. Have you dealt with that problem in totality?
I think the bottom line is that there was a what I call the supply chain challenge, because before the current economic situation and the inflation, suppliers were willing to supply and they wait for 3 months to be paid, right? But now suppliers are saying, I can wait. My money will diminish in value. So it was a point in time when the suppliers came. So we had a big meeting with them. They said, no, we can no longer wait, right? So you have done your cash flow projections, and you thought that if you get this amount, you'll be able to pay the suppliers. Now they will supply the next 2 months, more money will come, and then you pay them, and they say we can't. So you are at your wit's end at that point, trying to struggle to find out how do I do this. That is why we came up with an emergency plan, make sure all schools have the items that they needed so badly, keep them moving, and we are continuing that trend of ensuring that the items that are needed urgently go to the schools, we go to controller, we get some funding, and then we also do what is called perishable. These are the money for salt and other items, tomato, that the headmaster had to go to the market and buy. So we are working, it's a work in progress, but there was a major disruption of the process whereby a supplier had to wait. And sometimes they had to wait even beyond the 2 months. But because the value of their money was not diminishing, they were willing to wait. But now they have a challenge, and therefore we had to invent a new way of creating a sustainable supply chain management system. so that food items will go to the school.
So there's an understanding. They are supplying food now.
Yes.
I see. Because the last time I checked, the Northern Region Conference of Heads of Assisted Senior High Schools chairman said that, look, the schools don't have food. So the senior high school, that's SHS1 students who are supposed to report yesterday should stay at home. In fact, they were contemplating sending the SHS2 students home.
That's not accurate. I had a meeting with buffer stock. You see, food is supplied by buffer stock, not the Ministry of Education. It was a cabinet decision. So buffer stock that's under Ministry of Agric is the one that provides the food to the schools, and then we pay them. We had a meeting with the buffer stock 2 days ago, and conference call. They gave us how they are dealing with the situation and assured me that food should be going to the schools. That assurance I got from them, because I'm not in charge of food distribution, but the buffer stock company gave me the firm assurance that the schools that are opening will get food items to keep the students fed.
I see. And so that's based on that assurance, you're saying that we should not expect any news of shortage of food items in senior high schools in the coming weeks or months?
Based on the assurance that I got from them, I can say that. But I want to emphasize that the Ministry of Education is not directly in charge of food supply. The portion that we deal with is disbursing money to the head to take care of the 30%, which is the perishables. But the 70%, which is food items, come from buffer stock. I had a firm assurance from them, together with the president of CHAS and secretary of CHAS. We met here, put them on the phone. They gave us a firm assurance that food items will be going to every school. I checked in this morning, and some heads of schools, of course, I couldn't call everyone. Those that I spoke with said, yes, they are getting some items from buffer stock. So I'm hopeful that the northern schools will get the same items that are going to the southern schools based on the distribution schedule.
So when this issue came up, there were proposals that there should probably be a review of the engagement between the Education Ministry, the buffer stock, and the food supply, so that the heads of the schools now, as was the case previously, would have the right of identifying and engaging their own food suppliers, so that they would have developed some level of goodwill, understanding. So if there is a crisis situation where the money is not coming in, based on that goodwill they built, the food suppliers can still supply food to them, and they will not have a shortage of food items.
When it's inflation and the person believes they are losing their capital, it's not about goodwill. Buffer stock had developed goodwill with the suppliers, but it was a crisis where they felt that we can no longer do 2 months and 3 months and even 5 months. We need it now. So that will not solve the problem. The Minister of Finance have done well releasing funds, and want them to continue to release funds in a timeous manner so that suppliers will keep supplying. That is the solution, and not headmasters developing relationship with suppliers. Buffer stock has that relationship with suppliers.
Finally, there was a recent investigation by Corruption Watch on examination leakages. And has the ministry seen this?
Yes, of course. They came straight to me before they went public.
They went public.
Yeah.
And this is something that's not new, because, for instance, Africa Education Watch has been consistent about what's happening with examination leakages.
Yes. I'll tell you, WIC have many proposals as to how you solve this problem. I'm concerned that some of their solutions will not work.
WIC solutions will not work?
When you talk about recruit ambassadors who preach their children not to cheat, it's not going to work. WIC must wake up and smell the coffee. And we're going to get them to wake up and smell the coffee.
You get WIC to wake up?
Oh, yes. I said it. We've told them, and we're going to tell them again, that you have to remove the incentive for cheating. The incentive for cheating has to be eliminated. And yes, we do these exams with West Africa, right? So when I make proposal as Minister for Education, because the president at the State of the Nation said leakages, examination malpractice should be eliminated in this country. I go to work on it. When I make a proposal, because it's the whole West Africa, it has to go through a system. That is why I cut them a slack. But you know that last year, examination leakages so far as BEC concerned was eliminated. How was it eliminated? They did what we've been telling them to do, which is called serialization. Parallel exams. Sit in the room with you. We have different questions. Different regions with different questions. So last year when the BEC started, the people who create the rogue website, so that is why I'm saying sometimes they are proposals. They have to get to the bottom of it. They've been lamenting about rogue websites, right? Where people create and they sell examination questions, right? They have invested time and effort, national security, everybody worried about rogue website. But how is it that the rogue website were pulled down last year by the people who created them? Because WAEC removed the incentive for cheating by creating different exams for different regions of the country. So the moment these people saw that the questions were different across the country, they themselves issued a statement on their website and say it didn't work out. And that was the end of rogue website. The developer themselves pulled it down. So what I'm saying is this. We are going to forge ahead and demand that at the West Africa Examination Council WASI level, right? The same thing that they did with BEC that put to bed leakages can be done. And we are demanding that it should come all the way to a level where you have parallel exams within the hall. That I'm sitting with you, my question 1 may be your question 20. And even when the questions are the same, the multiple choice questions are scrambled in such a way that your answer is D and mine is A. So if teachers want to go and hide in the bush, can they answer 20 versions of the question before time is over? They can't. So the thing is this. They did it with BEC. We need to do it with WASI and eliminate the incentive. If you want to leak the questions, you leak 10 versions, the student is uncertain whether he's going to get version A or version 1 or version 10, therefore he won't buy. He will rather study. Until we get to e-testing, where there can be 10,000, 20,000 of the same question on a server, and it's being released to us individually, where you know you can't cheat, we have to do serialization, take away the incentive for people to leak examination questions, and you don't have to worry about all this BNI involvement and police involvement, national security involvement. We need to remove the root, cut the root, and get it out, the same way they did with BEC last year. They need to let Ghanaians know they did a fantastic job, and I commend WAEC for that. But we need to move another level and work with the other West African countries and let them know that Ghana wants to change its education system. We want to remove the incentive for cheating. We want students sitting in the examination hall to have different type of questions, the same level of difficulty.
So that's the Education Minister, Dr. Yao Osei-Edichum, in that interview with me. We touched on a number of things. The full complement of that interview will be played as well on TV3 in subsequent days. A lot of it as well we'll find in the news. But I've been joined on Zoom by Kofi Asari. He is Executive Director of the Africa Education Watch. Kofi, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on Ghana Tonight. So you heard me ask the minister, and I'm starting off with where we ended this interview, the issue of examination leakages. He says WAEC has to wake up, smell the coffee. The ministry has made recommendations, but it's yet to be accepted by WAEC. What should the ministry do to ensure that the decline in the integrity and credibility of our exams is addressed?
Yeah, good evening. Good evening to your viewers. WAEC is an intergovernmental agency, and they have a strong tendency to always resist certain reforms. and they resist using their intergovernmental agency status. So, for example, WAEC has always resisted being regulated by a regulator anytime we had convinced the minister that it is necessary to do so, as it is in all advanced educational systems globally. They have resisted it by simply saying that because we are an intergovernmental agency, you can't establish a regulator for us in Ghana when similar structures do not exist in Liberia or Sierra Leone or Gambia or Nigeria. So in the same way, if WAEC is confronted with the proposal of the Ministry of Education to serialize questions, they will similarly say that we are an intergovernmental organization, and so we cannot have a unique way of setting questions for Ghana, different from Gambia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria. That is how they have been frustrating, efforts to reform the system, which they are part of. And I can relate to, the systemic resistance that the ministry or the minister is facing. I've always said that I've never been in doubt that the minister is committed to tackling examination fraud head on, because he first appreciated it. And since then, he's been working around the clock, in the midst of all the resistance from the system to build a credible system devoid of examination malpractice. But the solution is that we need to indicate quite clearly and strongly to WAEC that in as much as it is an intergovernmental organization, there is an act of parliament in Ghana,
Right.
that enacts WAEC to operate in Ghana. And by so doing, WAEC is bound to operate within the legal framework of Ghana. So it can't be the case that for every reform that needs to be undertaken, all 5 countries must agree. Let me give you an example. Nigeria has broken WAEC's monopoly. Did the world come to an end when Nigeria broke monopoly? Nigeria has broken WAEC monopoly about 5 or so years ago. They've broken their monopoly. So this thing about we are an intergovernmental organization, for me, so far as I'm concerned, it's only an excuse.
Okay.
And we are going to support government to push through any reform agenda that will lead to, one, questions not leaking in the first place. In the first place, questions shouldn't leak. They shouldn't leak. So any such reform that will lead to WAEC becoming an organization where questions do not leak anymore. 2, where there's a regulator who will sanction WAEC when questions leak. That regulator is the regulator who will give a listening ear to students or candidates or parents when they feel that they have been treated unfairly by WAEC. That regulator is the regulator that will receive videos or evidence of malpractices and fraud and then act on them by sanctioning WAEC. We don't have that.
Okay.
So until we have such a regulator, it will be difficult because WAEC will still be the referee and the player.
Well, and on that bit, he says that WAEC would have to wake up and smell the coffee. They are on a path of raising these issues and making sure that WAEC does what is expected to improve on the credibility of our exams. But we touch on a number of things, and that I'm going to quickly get into the free senior high school program. He says that the president, whom he serves, is very convinced in his mind that despite the economic challenges that we are faced with, the free senior high school program should not be reviewed. I know you've been consistent about, for instance, the review of the feeding component of the free SHS. The minister says that as of now, there hasn't been any proposal to that effect.
Yeah, Alfred, before I come to that, let me just indicate that Ghana has a responsibility of being a major player within the WAEC system and West Africa to lobby all other countries, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Gambia, and Nigeria, to appreciate the need for a regulatory mechanism for WAEC and all the other reforms that the minister is trying to push in place, including the parallel serialization of questions. Because the leakage issue we are discussing is not only Ghana. It happens in other countries too, if not all their countries. So it's a challenge that countries are aware of. We work in other countries and we know how they are all having challenges with leakages.
Right.
So I'm not sure the countries will not support Ghana when Ghana raises this idea at WAEC West Africa. And we encourage the minister to pursue it, by lobbying other African countries, or the other 4 African countries, to support our reform agenda. On the feeding issue, His Excellency made a point, I think 2 weeks ago, that the free senior high school policy is not going to be cancelled. But he didn't say it wasn't going to be reviewed. In any case, no one has said that it should be cancelled. So I thought that his comments should have addressed the issue of a review. But so far as we are concerned, the free senior high school program is not your regular education policy. It is not the free compulsory universal basic education policy. Okay, it is a political promise. It is a policy which is driven from the seat of government, not the Ministry of Education. Don't forget that it's only about 2 years ago that the budget was released to the ministry. It was at the Flagstaff House under the Office of Government Machinery. So every form of review of that program will have to be initiated and sanctioned. Will have to be initiated, if not sanctioned, from the presidency. Only the president can give that fiat. And so I understand why the minister is powerless, even though I know that being an experienced educationist exposed to global standards in education, I know that the minister, will agree with us that given the circumstances we find ourselves in, the best way to spend limited resources is not to spend close to 1.5 billion feeding children, some of whom, are not poor. And so we can only hope that His Excellency, based on the appeal that the Presby Church made to him last Sunday in Abetifi, he will continue to review some of the items that government is paying. As I keep saying, if government decides to take off just 4 items, school uniform, church cloth, and then there's one called, what's the name? There are 4 items: school uniform, church cloth, exercise books, and notebooks. Not textbooks, so exercise books and notebooks. If these 4 items are taken off, it saves government close to 200 million Ghana cedis a year. So it's not a matter of going to look for who can pay, who cannot pay, because all the children in senior high schools were having their uniforms bought their parents when they were in junior high school. You understand? So there are various ways of being cost efficient or optimizing, costs while maintaining the quality and also the effectiveness, of the program as the finance minister.
Kofi, I thank you, as always. Thank you so much for your time this evening on Ghana Tonight. Kofi Asare is Executive Director of the Africa Education Watch. They've been leading this whole conversation about examination leakages and also the issues with the free senior high school financing. They propose a review of the feeding component, which is about 60% of the entire budget for free senior high school every year. This year's 2.3 billion. Now, we've seen issues with the supply of food. Now, let me say this. The Northern Region CHAS, Conference of Heads of Assisted Senior High Schools, are on record to have said that they have had issues with food supply, had the Form 1 students stay at home. The minister has given assurance food is going. It's something that we will track and let you know as well whether this is happening. And the textbooks as well, we're told by September, before the children get back to school, the textbooks could have been ready. We will give you an update on that as well. And the cost of the free senior high school program. Stay with us. We'll get all of that on Ghana Tonight. But let's go to the issues relating to still with money, because in the end, we are the IMF because of the economic crisis that we are faced with. And it trickles down on all of us. And that's why today, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana announced a 300 basis point increase in the policy rate. You should be concerned about that, especially if you're taking a loan. Even if you haven't taken a loan from the banks, you should be. Because the private sector, that's a businessman who has gone to take the loan, would pay more in terms of interest on the loans that they've taken. And that would also translate into the cost of the goods that you're going to buy and the services you have to enjoy, especially from the private sector. In January, the policy rate was 14.5%, increased to 17%, then to 19%, and then it was maintained last month, despite the calls by stakeholders to have it increased. Then in August, today, as a matter of fact, today, after that emergency meeting by the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana, it's been increased to 22%. Now, that's why this clearly would impact on the interest on the loans that have been taken, especially because the banks would respond when the Ghana reference rate goes up. In the midst of all this, why should you be concerned? Courage Bote is a currency analyst, is actually also a financial analyst joining us on Zoom. Courage, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. So this was expected. In fact, there had been predictions of a 200% basis, that's 200 basis points, but we've seen 300 basis points increase. How is this going to impact on the person who is watching me right now? Courage. Hello, Courage, can you hear me? Hello, Courage, can you hear me? Courage, if you can unmute, can you hear me now?
Good evening. Your voice is a bit far back, but
can you hear me now?
Very faintly.
Can you hear me now? Hello, Courage, can you hear me? Analysis is actually also a financial analyst joining us on Zoom. Courage, good evening to you. Courage, if you can listen to me, that is, if you can hear me, and can you hear me now? Unfortunately, we're having challenges with Courage's connection. We'll rectify that. We would
via Zoom.
You can hear me via Zoom, but if you can first of all tell us how this is going to impact on the person who is watching me at the moment, Courage. Okay. Unfortunately, we have a little hitch predictions of it with the connection. We'll rectify that with Courage's connection. That's Courage Bote. He is a financial analyst also watching us. But take a look at this. I just want you to understand why this should be of concern to you. The rise in the policy rate over the period from 14.5 to 22% as we speak. And clearly, if you listen to the concerns that have been raised, especially by private sector when the policy rate goes up, it's because of how it impacts on the interest on the loans that especially the private sector has taken. And remember, the private sector is dealing with a number of things, including having to compete with government, because government is borrowing from the local market, and they've already crowded out. So when the policy rate goes up and it impacts on the interest rate, already the loans they are taking, which is expensive, becomes higher. In fact, we are talking about an interest rate of an average around 28% now. Remember that if the private sector is borrowing at a high cost, they would pass it on, especially those in business. They will pass it on to you and I, the consumer. That's you and I who patronize their goods and their services. That's how this impacts on you. But if you have taken a loan from the banks, you should expect that all things being equal, you're probably paying a little higher as well, because the reference rate would obviously respond to what has happened today, and that has a high probability of impacting on the interest that you are paying on the loans that you have taken. If you have taken a mortgage as well, at this time, this certainly would impact on you. And this is squeezing the credit that you have. That is the money that you already have. And remember that the money that you have in your pocket is not increasing. That money is not increasing. So even though you've taken the loan on a salary that you are receiving maybe 6-8 months now, which has not seen an increase, the interest that you are paying on the loans that you have taken is rising. So it's taking more money from you. That's the real concern for you. And how the businesses that have taken the loans will also react to this is where the issue is. But let's stay a bit quickly, round this up quickly, and let's reconnect with Courage Bote, who is a financial analyst. Courage, thank you for joining us again. If you can hear me, I was asking a specific question about why the person who is watching me should be worried about this 300 basis point increase in the policy rate and 22% as we speak.
Well, very good evening to your listeners. I believe you can hear me now.
I can hear you clearly.
All right, sure. Yes. So the cost of funds to banks and to everybody that gets money from the Bank of Ghana as the lender of last resort is actually the policy rate. And so with the policy rate increasing by some 3% from 19 to 22, all other things being equal, like you introduced the Ghana reference rate, which is the benchmark for lending, at least at the risk-free rate or level, should be around that 22% or even more, slightly more. And then when risk premium is slapped onto that, we should be getting loan rates now approaching 30%. And in fact, loan rates at some point were around 20, 21%, but has been increasing since the recent spate of policy rate hikes all the way to where it is now. And so with this, we could expect some jump in loan rates all across. Government themselves would have to suffer because bond rates generally are now around 33, 32% levels. The 91-day bill, which is the risk-free rate, is now around 27.3%. And so with this jump in the policy rate, it means that cost of funds for banks and individuals in general are higher now. And so if government must secure those funds on the market, it must come at a higher rate. You just oppose that with the fact that growth rates for the first quarter was about 3.3%. And then we have had to slash our growth outlook for the rest of the year from that 5.8 to some 3.7. It means that with this higher cost of funds, investments might suffer at the private sector, and even for government because cost of funds are higher, which might mean that the extent to which we can support growth through some fiscal stimulus and some other critical investments in some infrastructure might suffer really. So it's been a tough year, but tougher times ahead still with the kind of decisions.
Your analysis, what is the lowest cost of or the interest on the loans on the market now per the prevailing rates as we speak?
Well, it's around 23, 24% and still going up. And so with these adjustments, you might have it go near the 27, 28% levels. I must say that it won't be instantaneous. It would take time to adjust. But then currently they are doing around 23, 24%, and it will go higher with this adjustment.
So essentially what you're saying is that anybody who is watching me, a private sector player, businessman, or an individual who's taking a loan, you should just be prepared to pay a little more on, say, the interest on the loans that you have taken, and it's going to take away from what you already have in your pocket, which is small.
Exactly. Of course, for loans already existing, if they are fixed rate loans, you do not suffer anything. If they are flexible rate loans tied to, say, some inflation rate or some 91-day bill plus some spread, then of course your loan obligation interest cost is going higher. But if they are fixed rate loans, then of course you are locked in for a while. But ultimately, every other person going in for new loans now would have to brace themselves for higher rates because it will filter through to those rates in the market.
Courage, thank you. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate it, as always.
You're welcome.
Great. That's Courage Bote. He is lead researcher at GCB Capital and giving us that analysis, and also a financial analyst joined with the detail of how this recent development, in fact, it just came through today from the Bank of Ghana Monetary Policy Committee, would impact on you watching us, and why you should be concerned about all of this. Let's end this with this quickly. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Alan Kojo Chemanting, has cautioned supporters of the new Patriotic Party against acts that may disturb the peace and harmony within the party. Now, this follows some comments that alleged to have been made by one of the organizers of a health walk organized in support of him. That's Alan Chemanting over the weekend in Kumasi in the Ashanti region. I'm going to give you just a brief of the said statement from Alan Kojo Chemanting, is on the screen now. While addressing the crowd, you recall that Hobson Adoye is reported to have said a number of things about the NPP tradition and so on and so forth. This is what Alan Kojo Chemanting has said in the statement released. My attention has been drawn to disturbing headlines and discussions in the media in respect of comments made by Hobson Adoye after a peaceful health walk organized by individuals from all walks of life, in particular, sympathizers of the NPP in the Kumasi area. Now, he condemned the statement in this said that's what's made by Hobson Adoye, and he says that he believes, quote, that it is impossible or inappropriate to diminish or distort the fundamental contributions and stature of any of the founding fathers of the NPP tradition. Now, according to him, he has also noticed a dangerous trend in our body politics in Ghana of using misinformation and propaganda and instigating disunity in the party. And let me go on to Zoom quickly. And Dr. Asante is a senior political science lecturer at the University of Ghana Political Science Department. Dr. Asante, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on Ghana Tonight. We've seen a posture by the new executives. Now, they are reining people in. They've just punished about 2 people, a member of parliament and then Hobson Adoye, for comments they've made and openly campaigning for candidates, presidential candidate hopefuls. How is this going to impact on the party in preparation towards, for instance, electing the flag bearer and going into 2024? Hello, Dr. Asante, can you hear me?
Yes. This is the question again.
Great. I was asking about the posture of the new executives of the NPP now. We've had 2, that's a member of parliament and a member of the party who have been punished by the party, as a matter of fact, for comments they made openly declaring support for presidential candidate hopefuls going into 2024. How is this going to impact on the party, the new posture and the actions of these new executives?
Rules are meant to regulate the conduct of people, and anytime there is a breach, there is a corresponding sanction. When you leave this thing on use, you are likely to open the floodgates for all sorts of misbehavior. So I am happy that they've cracked the whip, and then they've whipped some people to line. It should have come a long time, but better late than never. This is how we organize political parties, so that when you set rules and time and again, where instead of members of the party helping the government to succeed, they are now canvassing and literally campaigning for would-be, candidates of the party. They always forget that you can do all the jostling now, but if the government, which is in power, is not able to perform, I'm afraid campaign will be very difficult, if not impossible task for you. So I am happy that leadership has taken that position to deal with them. It will serve as deterrent for others who are having such ideas that they want to bring out one day.
Dr. Asante, thank you so much for your thoughts on this, and really appreciate a quick input on this. And that's Dr. Asante is a senior political science lecturer at the University of Ghana Political Science Department. Thank you so much for staying with us on Ghana Tonight. On behalf of the rest of the team, we appreciate your company as always. I am Alfred Okanse. Have a good night. Join us same time tomorrow.